Good afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRC Media. Thank you for joining us today as we continue our conversation with candidates that are going to be on the November 3rd state ballot. The city of Fall River is represented by three state representatives on Beacon Hill. Of those two representatives, only one, State Representative Paul Schmid, actually has a challenger this year. We're going to spend some time talking with that challenger. I'm pleased to be joined by Evan Gendreau. He is the Republican nominee and candidate running in the 8th Bristol District. Evan, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Um, People may not know anything about you. So I guess my first question is tell us a little bit about you and why you decided to run for state representative.
My name is Evan Gendreau. I'm running for state representative because I believe that our community deserves a new voice at the state house. It's Massachusetts is one of only a few states where there's such a low competition rate in state legislative elections. So it's important that we have folks to run against, people that have been in the legislature for so long and have run unopposed. My platform consists of running on lower taxes to stimulate growth in our economy, increase accountability and transparency, and supporting our public safety officers in our community.
So let me ask you, what have you seen that you feel has not been done either within the district or even, in a broader scale from the state legislature in general that you feel you can make a difference?
One of the things that we hear most about on the campaign trail, we've talked to thousands of voters throughout the community, and there are diverse needs as well, which is important to note. The district that I'm running to represent consists of Westport, Fall River, New Bedford, and Freetown. So there are very different needs in each community, but an issue that we hear a lot about is taxes, especially now. Massachusetts, since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, saw over 1 million people file for unemployment. So, and we still hear about efforts to increase taxes on individuals and working families, increase regulation on small business, and that's no way to stimulate economic growth, especially during a crisis like this, an unprecedented crisis, I'll add. So that's one of the biggest concerns that folks have in the community, and that's one of the top issues that I'm running on.
People, I'm sure you've been approached with this issue that they look at you and say, "Boy, he's a young lad. Is he really up to doing this?" How do you respond to that type of criticism about your age and your youth in terms of running for this type of office?
I think it's an asset. I think that our community deserves a new voice. Engaging younger people in the political process is a great thing to do. We see, unfortunately, lower rates of participation among young people. So I think it's important to get them out to vote, get them involved in the process. I've been involved in local politics for a couple of years. I worked on a U.S. Senate campaign in 2018. I worked at the Public Policy Center over in Dartmouth for a year as well, where I worked on a lot of community issues. So these are issues that I've worked a lot on. I've worked on the data that pertains to it, spoken to a lot of folks in the community, heard their concerns. So I think it's my age is an asset in this race.
One of the things that Massachusetts, some will say, is guilty of is being a heavily Democratic, and I'm going to say big D, not small d, Democratic run state. Other than, in the case of the current situation, the governor and lieutenant governor are Republicans. What do you bring in terms of your Republican background that will be of importance here? Because in speaking with the current state reps and Senator Rogers, who I've had the opportunity to speak to in the past, they say that even though there's a lot of polarization in Washington, it doesn't appear to be the case here in Massachusetts. Republicans, Democrats all get along together. They all work toward one goal. I guess my question is, do you hope to continue with that practice if elected?
Yes, I am proud to say that I'm dedicated to bipartisan efforts. I think that's an important pillar of good government, and it's something that I'm committed to continuing on. And it's a great point that was raised about Massachusetts. At the state level, that same polarization doesn't necessarily exist to the same extent that it does at the national level, which is a great thing, I think. In today's politics, where it's so divisive and polarized, Massachusetts stands out as a state that, even though it is heavily blue, there is common ground out there. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities for us to work together on a lot of issues because we do have a common goal, which is to serve the residents of our community. So by having those conversations with members having conversations with our neighbors, with teachers, firefighters, police officers, everyone involved in our community, and also having conversations with people who don't necessarily agree with us as well is very important. And I think Massachusetts, I mean, you have a Republican governor and a Democratic state legislator, but they're able to still work together and find common ground, and that's something that I'm committed to as well.
I want to get back to the diversity, if you will, of the district. You mentioned that, the 8th District encompasses a small part of Fall River in the southeast end of Fall River, and also, Westport, Freetown, and the tip of the north of New Bedford. You've got, New Bedford and Fall River, gateway cities, very different demographics from some of the rural locations that you find in Westport and Freetown. How do you feel yourself, working with the local officials in meeting those different needs of those types of communities?
I've had the opportunity to speak with people from every community in the district and elected officials as well as residents. And there are different needs, and it's important to recognize those. Westport and Freetown are largely rural communities where there's environmental issues, there's agricultural issues, there's concerns about taxes. Some of the issues overlap between the 4 towns in the district as well, but in Fall River and New Bedford, there are also uniquely different issues as well, which is inherent to, just their geography. They're more urban communities, so there's different concerns there. Some of the things that we hear a lot about is crime and public safety in our cities. And you mentioned that they're gateway cities as well. So there is a lot of potential, I think, in this district, even though it is so diverse and there are so many different issues at play. On a day-to-day basis, I'll hear about vastly different issues, but there is a lot of potential in the South Coast as a region with infrastructure, with jobs, with workforce development, with education. So this is a great area. There's a lot of potential, and I think we can capitalize on where we can improve and work harder and make big improvements in the district.
So I'm going to give you an opportunity now to talk about some of the other issues you feel will be important to you. I guess let me ask you: is there an overriding issue, if elected, that you'd like to move forward in the legislature? I know right now, obviously, COVID is a huge a burden, if you will, on the work that's being done on Beacon Hill. But are there any other initiatives specifically that you'd like to get involved with, and maybe some committees you'd like to work on?
I've expressed interest in the Education and Labor Committee. I think that's given the speaking with employers in the South Coast and in our district, there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of potential for job growth. I think we can couple our education policy with a robust workforce development policy to make sure that children graduating schools, going out of high school, going into trades, going to college, have jobs when they come out. And there are a lot of employers that are ready to identify the needs for our policymakers to set that in motion. So that's an issue that I'm focused on. I'm also focused on accountability and transparency. And I know that's an issue that a lot of politicians will talk about as an abstract thing, but there are concrete things that we can do to improve accountability and transparency in the State House. Massachusetts is one of only 4 states in the nation where the legislature is exempt from public records law. So ending that exemption, having more transparency on Beacon Hill, there are actual ways that we can do that. You hear a lot of things that are shrouded in secrecy up at the State House, but I'm committed to running a transparent campaign and if elected, having a transparent office. So there are things that we can do at the state. Another issue is, I mentioned it before, is taxes and fiscal responsibility, making sure that policies that lawmakers enact won't hurt the pockets of working families, especially during the pandemic. Reopening policies are also important. A study came out with the Retailers Association and the Restaurants Association that said up to 30% of restaurants and retailers might not reopen in the state, which is a heavy burden for working families. It's a heavy burden for small business owners in our community. So it's important that we support them in reopening and making sure that we have policies that protect public health while also ensuring a safe return.
I do want to go back to you running as a Republican in a very blue state of Massachusetts. Have you heard any concerns from constituents, voters at your meeting that will connect you directly with President Trump and people's frustrations with him? And do you feel that could be an issue as people go to the polls when they look at, again, that Democrat and Republican split?
It's undoubtedly an issue that comes up from time to time, but my focus is not on the national political environment. My focus is on the people of Westport, Fall River, New Bedford, and Freetown, and working hard to make sure that their interests are represented up at the State House. My campaign is not run on national political issues. I don't. If you go through our campaign pages, we don't, delve into any of those issues at the national level, because it is a divisive environment, especially now. It's becoming increasingly polarized on both sides of the aisle, and we try to keep a very local, community-based approach to the issues.
All right, Evan Gendreau, Republican in the 8th Bristol District, running against incumbent Democrat Paul Schmidt. Thank you for your time today. Best of luck in the election, and hopefully we can talk again soon. I appreciate it.
I appreciate that, Keith. And I'll just add, if I could, if
Sure.
anyone out there would like to learn more about our campaign, our website is www.evanforrep.com. You can also visit us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Reach out to us via email, info@evanforrep.com, or call or text us at 774-264-1973. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it.
All right, Evan, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here at FRC Media. Have a great day, and please vote on November 3rd.